When I first saw the ad for an overnight zookeeper position, I thought it was a typo. Who keeps a zoo open at night? The pay was generous, too generous, and the job description was vague. Caretaker for the midnight exhibit. Must follow all instructions carefully. I shrugged and applied. Rent was overdue, and something about it pulled me in. The zoo wasn't on any map I'd ever seen. I drove for miles into the forest until the trees opened, revealing a tall wrought iron gate. At the top, a sign read, "Midnight Exhibit." No cheerful animals painted on it, no bright colors, just the words carved into black metal. My stomach tightened, but I convinced myself it was just nerves. Inside, the zoo looked wrong. Lanterns instead of lamps. Stone paths instead of paved walkways. The enclosure stretched far too wide, vanishing into unnatural shadows. I expected someone to greet me, but the air was still, too still. Finally, a man in a black coat appeared, carrying a folder. "You're the new warden," he said, his voice flat. He handed me a laminated sheet of rules. My pulse jumped as I scanned the first few lines. Rule 1. Do not feed the animals unless it is exactly midnight. Rule 2. Never look directly into the lion's enclosure after 1 a.m. Rule 3. If you hear laughter near the aviary, do not respond. I laughed nervously, but the man didn't. His eyes were dark, unblinking. "The rules aren't a joke," he whispered. "They're the only reason you'll make it until morning." Then he pressed the keys into my hand and walked away without another word. The gate clanged shut behind him, leaving me in the silent zoo, clutching the rules, wondering what exactly I had just agreed to. "They're the only reason you'll make it until morning." Then he pressed the keys into my hand and walked away without another word. The gate clanged shut behind him, leaving me in the silent zoo, clutching the rules, wondering what exactly I had just agreed to. My footsteps echoed unnaturally, like the sound stretched out and came back delayed. I passed an aviary covered in black netting, though no bird calls came from within. Just silence. When I paused, I thought I heard something faint, a soft, high-pitched giggle. My throat went dry. Rule 3 screamed in my head, "Do not respond." So I kept walking. At the center of the zoo stood a clock tower, old and crooked, its hands ticking loudly even from a distance. Midnight was still minutes away. My stomach growled, and I thought of the animals. What would happen if they weren't fed exactly at midnight? The rules hadn't said, and I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. I reached the staff building, small and wooden, more like a hunting cabin than an office. Inside was a single desk, an oil lamp, and another sheet of rules pinned to the wall. These ones were different. Rule 7. If you see a visitor in the zoo after midnight, do not let them leave. My hands trembled as I read it. Who would be visiting a zoo at midnight? I sat at the desk, the lamp's flame flickering as though the air itself was moving. From outside came a deep growl, low and guttural. I looked at the clock. 1 minute to midnight. My hand gripped the set of keys, each tagged with numbers I didn't recognize. Feeding time was near. The clock's bell rang once, loud and metallic. Midnight. Instantly, the zoo seemed to wake up. The lions roared in unison, the aviary rattled, and something large splashed in the distance. My chest tightened as I grabbed the feeding pail sitting in the corner. The smell made me gag, raw meat thick and dripping. This was my job now. I approached the lion enclosure first. Their glowing eyes followed me as I slid the meat through a chute built into the bars. The lions didn't pounce. They walked slowly, too slowly, almost human in their movements. When they finally bent to eat, the sound was sickening, teeth grinding, bones cracking. I forced myself not to look directly at them. Next was the aviary. The rules hadn't said what was inside, only warned about laughter. I carried a bag of seeds, sprinkling them through the feeding slots. The shadows inside stirred. I glimpsed something with too many wings, feathers shifting like smoke. Then came the laughter again, closer this time, almost playful. My jaw clenched as I walked away. I followed the path toward a reptile house. Inside, the air was damp and warm, smelling of moss and decay. Cages stretched into the shadows, some shaking as though something enormous moved within. I placed raw fish in the troughs, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped the pail. The hissing began, dozens of voices blending together. As I turned to leave, I felt something brush my ankle. I froze. Slowly, I looked down. A snake, black and glistening, slid past my boot. Its eyes weren't like any reptile I'd seen, round, white, and human-like. It slithered back into the shadows without striking, but my pulse hammered. I realized the rules hadn't mentioned the reptiles at all. Back outside, the zoo seemed louder, alive with movements I couldn't fully see. The lanterns flickered, and for a moment I thought they would go out. My eyes darted to the clock tower, 12:15. Only 15 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. I wondered how I would make it until sunrise. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I spun, expecting another staff member, but instead I saw a child. A little girl, no older than 10, standing on the path. Her dress was pale, her hair long and tangled. She smiled, lifting a hand in a small wave. My heart dropped. Rule 7 echoed in my mind. If you see a visitor, do not let them leave. Are you lost? I asked, voice shaking. She didn't answer, just tilted her head, eyes too wide, too still. Then she giggled, the same sound I'd heard near the aviary. My stomach churned. I wanted to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. She took a step forward, bare feet silent on the stone path. It's feeding time, she whispered. The words chilled me. I stumbled back, clutching the feeding pail as if it would protect me. The girl's smile widened, teeth too sharp, too many. I forced myself to look away, heart racing. Rule 7 didn't say what to do with a visitor. It just said don't let them leave. But how could I stop something that wasn't human? When I looked back, she was gone. Vanished. The path behind me was empty. My breath fogged in the cold air, though it hadn't been cold a moment ago. From the aviary, the giggling echoed again, dozens of voices this time overlapping. I clutched the rule sheet in my pocket. The night had only just begun, and already I was breaking. The sound of chains rattling drew me toward the elephant enclosure. The rules hadn't mentioned elephants, yet the ground trembled as if something massive paced within. I lifted the pail, but stopped. A pair of tusks glimmered faintly in the moonlight, curved, too sharp, almost metallic. The creature's eyes glowed red. It pressed against the bars, whispering in a voice that wasn't human. I dropped the meat into the chute, not caring if elephants were supposed to eat it. The creature devoured it noisily, each crunch sending shivers up my spine. When it finished, it turned away, and I saw something etched into its hide, symbols carved deep like scars. I didn't recognize the language, but it made my stomach twist. This zoo wasn't for animals. Moving quickly, I reached the penguin habitat. My relief vanished the moment I saw them. They stood perfectly still, hundreds of them lined in rows, eyes glowing faintly blue. None moved, none blinked. When I scattered fish across the ice, every head turned at once, snapping toward me in unison. Their beaks opened, and the sound they made wasn't a squawk. It was screaming. I covered my ears, stumbling back. The screaming went on until I crossed the rope barrier, then stopped instantly. The penguins stood motionless again, as if nothing had happened. My chest heaved, sweat slick on my forehead. I glanced at the rule sheet. Feeding was done, but the rules didn't say what to do for the rest of the shift. I walked back toward the staff building, hoping for answers. The path twisted oddly, longer than before. The lanterns swayed, casting tall shadows that didn't match my movements. I swore I saw extra figures walking alongside me, but when I looked, there was nothing. Just that cold, creeping sense of being watched. Every step made my pulse pound harder. When I finally reached the staff building, the desk lamp had gone out. Only the moonlight poured through the window, silver and sharp. On the desk lay something new. A coin. Old, tarnished, scratched beyond recognition. I hadn't seen it before. My chest tightened. I remembered the girl's whisper, "It's feeding time." Why would this coin be waiting for me? I picked it up without thinking. The metal burned against my palm, so hot I nearly dropped it. The second my fingers closed around it, the zoo went silent. The roars, hisses, and laughter, all gone. My ears rang in the absence of sound. The coin pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. I shoved it into my pocket, too afraid to look closer. The silence didn't last long. A deep groan rose from the earth itself, vibrating through the floorboards. I staggered to the window. The clock tower loomed, its hands frozen at 12:30. Yet the bell rang once, echoing like a funeral toll. From the enclosures, the animals began to move again, but slower, stranger, as though something unseen controlled them. The lions walked in circles, their glowing eyes fixed on the tower. The penguins all faced the same direction, bowing their heads. Even the snake pit shimmered with movement, all slithering toward the center. My stomach lurched. This wasn't feeding time. This was something else, some ritual I wasn't meant to see. The rules hadn't prepared me for this. I bolted from the staff building, heart hammering. The path drew me back toward the tower, though every instinct screamed to run the other way. Yet when I tried, the zoo shifted, twisting the paths. No matter where I turned, I ended up facing the crooked clock tower, its frozen hands glinting in the pale moonlight. There was no escape. The doors to the tower stood open, though I never saw them move. Inside, darkness yawned, thick and heavy. I wanted to run, but the coin in my pocket throbbed, tugging me forward like a magnet. My boots scraped stone steps as I entered. The air smelled of rust and old blood. Behind me, I swore I heard footsteps follow. Each step upward felt wrong, as though I climbed deeper instead of higher. The walls pulsed faintly, stone veins glowing with dull light. The bell above groaned again, though the hands hadn't moved. When I reached the landing, I froze. The little girl from before stood there, smiling, holding a lantern. Its flame was black. "You're late," she said. Her voice was different now, lower, almost adult. She stepped closer, lantern swinging, and I noticed her feet didn't touch the ground. The shadows bent toward her like servants. My throat went dry. "What do you want?" I whispered. Her smile widened, teeth sharp. She lifted her hand and pointed to my pocket. "You found the keeper's coin. That means it's yours now." I pulled the coin out, its surface glowing faintly red in the tower's gloom. It felt heavier than before, almost alive. "I don't want it," I stammered, holding it out. She tilted her head. "You don't get to decide. You've already chosen." The shadows tightened around me, cold and suffocating. I realized this wasn't just a job. It was a trap. The girl's eyes darkened, black pits stretching wider than they should. She leaned closer. "Every midnight, the animals must feed. But the coin chooses who watches them, who stays." My hand shook, clutching the coin. My thoughts raced. Had the last guard left this for me? Was that why I never met them? Was I next in the cycle? Suddenly, the floor shuddered. The walls groaned. Outside, the animals roared together, one terrible chorus. The girl's lantern flared black, casting the entire room in shadows. She whispered, "It's time." The bell above us tolled again, even though the clock hadn't moved. My ears rang as the sound shook through my chest. The coin burned hotter in my hand. I collapsed to my knees, gasping. The coin seared my palm, fusing to my skin. I screamed, trying to let go, but it wouldn't release. The girl laughed, her voice echoing unnaturally in the tower. "Now you're part of the midnight exhibit. You'll keep the rules, or you'll join them." My heart pounded as realization struck. I wasn't guarding animals. I was guarding prisoners. Monsters locked in cages not to protect us from them, but them from something worse. The coin throbbed, sending visions into my skull, faces of past wardens, hollow-eyed and broken. Each one held the same coin, each trapped in the same endless night. I staggered to my feet, dizzy, the truth pressing down like chains. The girl faded into smoke, leaving me alone. The lantern she held dropped, but instead of shattering, it hung in midair, flames still black and pulsing. I reached for it, against my better judgment. The moment I touched it, the entire zoo screamed, the animals, the ground, the air itself. The lantern's black fire burned cold, spreading through my veins. When the sound finally stopped, silence fell heavier than before. I stumbled from the tower, clutching both the coin and the lantern. The zoo was different now. The cages were gone. The paths stretched endlessly into darkness. The animals wandered free, eyes glowing, each watching me. The rules hadn't lied. I was their keeper now, and the night had only begun. The air was colder now, heavy with the smell of iron. I wandered the endless paths, every step crunching gravel that didn't echo back. The lantern's black flame flickered faintly, casting warped shadows. They twisted and shifted, sometimes looking like animals, sometimes like people. No matter how far I walked, the creatures followed. Their glowing eyes glimmered in the dark like constellations, always fixed on me. The lions prowled at the edges of the path, not rushing me, just watching. The penguins shuffled silently behind, hundreds moving as one. The tusked thing in the elephant cage stalked the tree line, its massive silhouette keeping pace with my steps. None attacked, not yet. I realized with dread, they were waiting for me to speak the rules, to prove I knew them. The coin pulsed in my palm, urging me to remember. I whispered the first rule aloud. Feed them when the bell tolls midnight. Their eyes locked onto me, tongues flicking. I remembered the second rule. Do not look into the pit for too long. Heart racing, I turned away before the sight pulled me deeper. The lantern flickered approvingly, as if feeding on my obedience. My throat was dry. The rules were my only shield. From the shadows came a soft laugh. The little girl's voice again, echoing around me though she was nowhere to be seen. Good, she whispered. You're learning. They like when the keeper follows. My skin prickled. I shouted into the darkness. What happens if I don't? Silence answered at first. Then faintly a single word slithered back. Devoured. My knees trembled. This wasn't a job. It was a sentence. The paths shifted again, twisting toward a massive gate I hadn't seen before. Iron bars rose high into the night, wrapped in chains etched with the same symbols I had seen on the tusked beast. The animals stopped at the gate, refusing to step closer. Their glowing eyes dimmed. My chest tightened as I realized whatever was behind that gate wasn't part of the exhibit. It was something worse. The gate rattled as I approached, each chain straining. A sound seeped through the cracks, not an animal noise but whispers, hundreds of voices chanting in unison, too faint to understand. The coin burned against my palm, pulling me closer. The lantern's flame guttered, almost dying. My body shook. I remembered no rule about the gate, yet here it was, alive, breathing, waiting. Then the bell tolled again. One heavy strike, though the clock tower's hands hadn't moved. The animals bowed their heads, every single one lowering, as if in reverence. The whispers behind the gate grew louder, merging into a roar. My knees buckled from the force. The coin fused tighter into my skin, glowing with each toll. I cried out, begging it to stop. But the sound only deepened, vibrating inside my skull. Suddenly, the girl appeared again, standing in front of the gate, lantern swinging in her hand. Her smile was sharper now, her teeth too long. This part was never for the rules, she said softly. This part is for you. She placed her hand on the gate. The chains rattled, loosening slightly. My stomach dropped. She wasn't a guide. She was a warden too, and she wanted me to replace her. No, I shouted, stumbling backward. The animals lifted their heads in unison, eyes glowing brighter, almost blinding. The girl's laughter cut through the night, echoing like shattered glass. She raised her lantern, and the gate's chains broke one by one, falling with deafening clangs. The ground shook. The whispers behind the bars turned to screams. I realized with horror, something was waking up. I clutched my lantern tight, its black fire flaring in answer. The coin seared, pushing words into my mind, a new rule I had never read. Do not open the gate before the third toll. My heart pounded. 2 tolls had already rung. The girl smiled wider, whispering, just one more. She pushed the gate harder, the chains snapping like brittle bones. I screamed, stop, but my voice was swallowed by the night. The third toll echoed, louder than the others, enough to rattle my bones. The gate flung wide, and something stepped through. It wasn't animal. It wasn't human. Its body shifted like smoke and flesh, faces pressing against its skin, screaming silently. Its eyes burned white, endless and hungry. The animals shrank back, roaring and hissing in terror. Even they feared this thing. My lantern nearly went out in its presence. The girl bowed to it, grinning. "Keeper," she whispered, gesturing toward me. The thing's burning eyes locked on mine. My chest seized, breath gone. The coin pulsed wildly, branding my palm deeper. The creature spoke without a mouth, its voice tearing through my mind. Another offering. My knees hit the ground. I wasn't just the zookeeper. I was the sacrifice. The thing reached for me, its hands stretching like smoke and claws. The animals roared, as though protesting, but none dared move closer. My lantern's flame sputtered, threatening to die. I gripped it hard, shouting the only rule I remembered clearly. The keeper must never fall. The lantern flared, blasting the creature with black fire. It reeled back, howling. My scream joined its own, echoing into the night. The girl snarled, face twisting grotesque. "You weren't supposed to use it yet." Shadows whipped around her, pulling her closer to the beast. I realized in terror she wasn't helping it, she was bound to it. The creature's white eyes burned hotter as it grabbed her. She shrieked, but not like a child, like a thing centuries old being dragged into judgment. My stomach turned as she dissolved into smoke. The creature loomed over me again, but its gaze was different now. Less hungry, more curious. The coin throbbed, sinking with its pulsing form. It whispered again, "Keeper." My chest tightened. Somehow, burning it with the lantern hadn't banished it, it had marked me. The animals crept closer, no longer snarling. They circled me instead, eyes glowing reverently. I had become part of the ritual. I staggered backward, clutching the coin. "I don't want this," I shouted. The lantern hissed, its black fire leaping higher. The creature's smoke-like body rippled with laughter, faces on its skin shrieking. "Want is not choice. Choice is not yours." Its words burned into my mind, drowning every thought. My head felt like it would split. I dropped to my knees, screaming. Then silence. The zoo froze. The animals bowed. The creature receded slowly, sinking back behind the gate. Chain snapped back into place, sealing it once more. My chest heaved as I gasped for air, sweat dripping from my skin. The girl's lantern clattered to the ground beside me, empty now. The black flame only burned in mine. My coin had stopped throbbing. The ritual had ended. For now. I stood shakily, staring at the zoo around me. The paths realigned, cages reappearing where emptiness had stretched. The animals returned to their enclosures as if nothing had happened. Yet their eyes never left me, filled with a strange respect and pity. I was not their guard anymore. I was their tether. The keeper of rules meant to bind something far worse. My legs shook as I realized the truth. The clock tower loomed above, its frozen hands glimmering faintly. Then the bell rang once more, this time for dawn. The animals settled, heads bowing in unison. The lantern's flame dimmed, but did not die. My shift was over, but I knew I couldn't leave. The coin had fused to my palm, the lantern bound to my grip. I was the midnight keeper now, and tomorrow the rules would begin again. The morning light never truly came. A pale gray fog lingered over the zoo, swallowing the sun. I wandered through the cages, every step heavy, my body aching like I hadn't slept in days. The animals had returned to their posts, still and quiet, watching me. Not one blinked. Not one breathed loudly. They were waiting. Not for feeding, not for freedom, but for me. I was no longer the outsider. I was the center of this place. I stumbled toward the exit, clutching the lantern. The gates loomed ahead, locked tight with rusted chains. I reached out, desperate, but the second I touched them, the lantern flared. My palm burned. The coin's heat surged, fusing my hand tighter to it. The gate didn't open. The truth struck like lightning. There was no leaving. Daylight, nightfall, it didn't matter. The zoo wasn't in my world anymore. I was trapped in its own. A low growl rumbled from the lion enclosure. I turned, heart hammering. The lions were awake, prowling slowly, eyes glowing faintly gold. But they didn't leap. They padded toward me, tails swaying, jaws parted. I backed up against the chained gate, breath shallow. Then one lowered its massive head, placing it on the bars. Submission. My throat tightened. They weren't animals at all. They were servants, waiting for their master's command. The air rippled. A tall figure stood suddenly in the distance, near the snake pit. I squinted. It wasn't the girl. This figure wore a zookeeper's uniform like mine, faded and torn, soaked with something dark. His face was obscured in shadow, his lantern unlit. Yet he moved with familiarity, tracing the cages like a ritual. My chest constricted. He wasn't just anyone. He was me. Or rather, the one who came before. The Phantom Keeper walked toward me, slow, deliberate. With every step, the zoo shifted. Cages warped, bars bending inward. The animals bowed lower. The fog thickened, choking me. He stopped just before the chained gate, raising his lantern high. In that moment, I saw his face clearly, sunken eyes, pale skin stretched thin, lips cracked. It wasn't just me. It was all of them. Every keeper before me. Their faces merged into one endless nightmare. The Phantom spoke again. We guard what should not walk. We bind what should not breathe. We endure. He thrust his lantern forward, pressing it against mine. The black flame surged violently, almost burning my skin. The coin pulsed so hard I cried out in pain. A flood of memories not my own poured into me. Keepers screaming, chains breaking, gates opening, creatures consuming. A cycle. An endless prison. A roll passed down. I staggered, clutching my head. Images ripped through my mind. Keepers feeding beasts that were not beasts, cleaning cages that stretched into infinity, sacrificing pieces of themselves to hold the zoo together. Some were devoured outright. Others became part of the creatures they guarded. None escaped. My lantern hissed, its black fire roaring high. The Phantom's face cracked into a grotesque grin. Now you see. The animals shifted uneasily. The tusked beast slammed against its bars, roaring so loud my ears rang. The penguins screamed in unison, a sound like nails on glass. Even the snakes writhed violently in their pit. They didn't want me to know. Knowledge was dangerous. By seeing the truth, I had broken an unspoken rule. The Phantom leaned closer, whispering in my ear, "Now you choose. Keeper or food." The lantern burned so hot I nearly dropped it. My instincts screamed at me to run, though I knew there was nowhere to go. The Phantom stepped back, waiting. The animals inched closer, eyes glowing brighter, eager for an answer. My chest heaved. Keeper or food? Survival or surrender? Then the coin shifted in my palm, not burning but vibrating softly. A third option, one no one else had taken. My heart pounded. The coin's whisper filled my skull. Break the rules. My skin crawled. Everything inside me screamed that doing so would kill me instantly. Yet the thought burrowed deeper. What if the rules weren't just protection? What if they were chains, not just for the creatures, but for me? I raised the coin to my eye, staring at its worn surface. The symbols glowed faintly like tiny cages. I clenched my fist tight. The Phantom hissed, his hollow voice cracking. "Do not stray." The animals growled in unison, pressing against their bars. My breath shook, but I lifted the lantern high. "No," I said, voice trembling but growing louder. "I won't follow anymore." The zoo roared. The snakes thrashed violently. The tusked beast shattered part of its cage. The fog quivered as if alive. The Phantom screamed, rushing at me with skeletal hands. I slammed the coin into the lantern's flame. The black fire erupted, engulfing the zoo in a blast of shadows. My ears popped, my body convulsed. The Phantom shrieked as his form splintered, faces tearing apart like paper. The animals howled, their eyes burning brighter, but instead of attacking, they froze. Chains appeared around them, tightening. They weren't free. They were being bound even tighter. By me. My knees buckled, but I couldn't drop the lantern. Its flame poured into me, sinking into my veins, filling my body with fire. My vision blurred. I saw the zoo from above, cages stretching into endless night. Every creature tied by glowing threads, all of them feeding into the lantern's core. And at the center of it all, me. Keeper. Prisoner. God. The title didn't matter. The zoo had chosen. The Phantom dissolved into ash, his last words echoing faintly. Endure. The chains around the gate tightened, sealing it once more. The whispers behind it silenced. The animals bowed again, not just in respect but in obedience. My hands shook, the lantern burning steadily. I wasn't just following the rules anymore. I was rewriting them. But the cost was clear. I was no longer human. I staggered to the mirror-like pool beside the penguin enclosure, desperate to see my face. The reflection rippled, revealing not me but something hollow-eyed, skin stretched thin, a lantern fused to its hand. My stomach twisted. The girl had been a keeper. The phantom had been a keeper. Now I was too. Different, yes, but bound all the same. My scream cracked the silence. It echoed back, but it wasn't my voice anymore. The fog began to recede, the sky lightening faintly. Dawn had finally broken. The animals returned to stillness, their eyes dimming as if asleep. The zoo looked almost normal again, cages aligned, paths straight. But I knew the truth now. The midnight exhibit wasn't a zoo. It was a prison. And I was the latest jailer, chained by coin and flame, cursed to keep the cycle alive. I collapsed on the bench by the entrance, staring at the chained gates. The coin pulsed faintly, no longer burning but humming like a heartbeat. The lantern's flame swayed softly calm. The rules echoed in my skull, every word carved deep. But underneath them was something new. My rule. The one I had spoken aloud. I won't follow anymore. My chest tightened. If I had rewritten one rule, maybe I could rewrite them all. The thought was intoxicating, terrifying. Power hummed in my veins. Could I free the animals? Could I tear down the gate entirely? Or would that unleash the thing behind it? The zoo was silent, but I felt its eyes on me, waiting, curious. The phantom's words clung to my bones, endure. But the coin's whisper persisted, break them. My heart thundered. The choice wasn't between keeper or food anymore. It was between jailer or destroyer. As the bell tolled once for the end of my shift, I rose slowly. The lantern burned steady, its black flame unwavering. The animals stirred faintly, acknowledging me as I walked past. I gripped the coin tight, staring at its glowing cage-like symbols. Tomorrow night I would decide, keeper of the cycle, or the one to end it forever. Either way, the zoo would never be the same again. The morning passed in silence, but I couldn't sleep. The animals never blinked, their gaze fixed as though waiting for me to falter. The gate pulsed faintly, chains rattling against something pressing from the other side. The coin hummed in my pocket, syncing with the lantern's glow. It was no longer just a tool. It was a key to hold or to open. When night returned, the fog thickened again, swallowing every star. The bell tolled once. My heart lurched. The lantern flared without me touching it. The animals stirred, restless, cages shaking. I realized something had shifted. The zoo wasn't just bound by the rules anymore. It was bound to me. If I failed, it failed. If I broke, it would break with me. The whispers behind the gate grew louder. Not voices, but hunger. They scraped at my mind, begging, taunting, promising. The coin grew hotter, urging me closer to the chains. My fingers trembled. If I placed the coin inside the lock, I knew the chains would fall. But what would step through? The phantom's warning echoed, we guard what should not walk. I forced myself away from the gate and walked the path. The animals growled low, uneasy. The snakes hissed, rising higher than before, their forms stretched too long, too human. The lions paced, eyes glowing faint gold. Even the penguins had gathered at the edge of their glass, staring at me as if expecting an answer. Their fear wasn't of escape. It was of me. The girl appeared again, standing by the tusked beast's cage. Her lantern burned faint, her eyes hollow. But this time her lips moved. "Don't let it out," she whispered, voice cracked and raw. "It doesn't want freedom. It wants you." My throat tightened. Before I could answer, her image flickered, breaking apart like smoke in the wind. I was left alone with the beasts and the gates pounding hunger. The night grew longer. Time didn't flow right. My watch hand spun wildly, hours vanishing in seconds. The zoo warped with it, cages twisting, paths splitting endless. I walked one direction only to return to where I began. The animals circled closer, no longer bound by their bars. The lantern pulsed brighter, struggling to contain them. If I faltered, they would break free. I fell to my knees, clutching the lantern. The phantom's words tore through me. The keeper does not leave. The keeper endures. My chest ached, the coin digging into my palm. My voice cracked as I shouted into the fog. Why me? No answer. Only the gate rattling harder, chains straining, something massive pressing from beyond. My scream was swallowed by the zoo's silence. The tusked beast slammed against its shattered bars, its body writhing unnaturally, tusks cracking like branches. The snakes coiled high, their mouths opening impossibly wide. The penguins screamed in unison, glass shattering as their forms distorted. All at once, every creature lunged, not at the gate, but at me. The lantern's flame roared higher, chains snapping out of its black fire to bind them mid-strike. My hands blistered. The zoo trembled. My vision blurred. The gate's whispers turned to a single word, release. It pounded in my skull, louder than thought, louder than breath. The coin seared into my palm, begging to be used. My knees shook. I could end this cycle, open the gate, free the zoo, free myself. But the girl's broken whisper lingered. It doesn't want freedom. It wants you. I dragged myself to the gate, sweat soaking my uniform. The chains quivered violently, nearly snapping on their own. I pressed the coin against the lock. The lantern howled, its flame flaring so violently I thought it would consume me. Shadows whipped like claws around my body. My reflection appeared in the gate's metal, eyes sunken, face pale, no longer mine. I wasn't the same person who'd started this job. The animals roared behind me, straining against shadow chains. Their cries weren't anger but terror. The snakes thrashed violently, penguins shrieking. Even the tusked beast let out a guttural wail. They weren't begging for release, they were begging me not to open it. My chest heaved. I realized they weren't prisoners. They were guards too, unwilling soldiers forced to play their role. The gate's whispers changed. Not pleading now, but mocking. Keeper, destroyer, slave. I clutched the coin tighter, every muscle trembling. If I opened the gate, the hunger would consume everything. If I held the rules, I would remain its prisoner forever. Neither option was survival. My mind screamed for a third path. The coin pulsed once more, whispering, rewrite. I shoved the coin into the lock, but instead of turning, I pressed it hard against the chains. The lantern flared, black fire crawling across the metal. My skin blistered. The whispers shrieked violently, furious. Chains rattled, sparks flying, but they didn't fall. They burned brighter, sealing tighter, as though fusing into the stone. The zoo shook, but the hunger screamed in rage. I had not freed it, I had bound it deeper. The phantom materialized, face twisted in fury. You dare defy the rules? He bellowed, lunging forward. His hands wrapped around my throat, icy and sharp. My lungs burned, but the lantern's flame surged between us, lashing him with fire. His body split, hundreds of faces wailing as they peeled apart. He shrieked, "The cycle cannot break," before crumbling into ash. The animals fell silent, bowing low. The zoo stilled, paths straightening, cages reforged. The fog lifted slightly, revealing faint moonlight. My chest heaved as I staggered back from the gate, the coin cooling in my palm. I hadn't broken the cycle. I hadn't freed the creatures. But I had changed it. For the first time, the choice had been mine. I slumped against a bench, gripping the lantern. Its flame no longer hissed, but pulsed steadily, calmer, almost alive. The animals returned to their places, still watching me, but less hostile now. Not servants, not guards, something in between. I wasn't just their keeper anymore.